Hello, this is Panic Consulting's ArcGIS Pro workshops, and today we're going to be talking about working with lines inside of ArcGIS Pro. I'm Frank Conkling, and like I said, hopefully we're going to have some fun today. Let's start with just sort of a quick introduction for those of you that may not know Panic Consulting. Go out to our website, you'll find out who we are, what we're doing. We're actually, today, we were formed on this day 24 years ago, so we are entering our 25th year now. Thank you to everybody that's we've had the pleasure to working with, and we look forward to helping more people in the future. So go out to our website, you'll find out who we are, how we work, why we do it, and everything. Also, there's an events page which lists all of our upcoming workshops that we have in place and that we've already scheduled. You'll see on there any conferences that we're scheduled to be at, and hopefully you'll stop by and see us at those conferences. If you look on the workshops menu area, you'll actually see the upcoming workshops, but you'll see a more detailed list of what they are, when they're going to be. And you'll also get a link to past workshops where you can actually download the recordings and look at them. If you don't like it there, you can actually go to our YouTube page. And on our YouTube page, you'll actually see a whole list of everything. Matter of fact, this is our YouTube page. We're actually thinking of going and putting on our website sort of a listing on this page here on our YouTube page of all the videos and maybe recommendations and the sequencing in which you can go and watch them. But that's not what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about lines. We're going to talk about how you can work and some of the tools that are available for lines inside of ArcGIS Pro. It's a little bit different today. We don't have Chris here. Chris is taking the day off, so that if you do have comments or questions, go ahead and put them over in the chat window, and I'm watching out of the side of my eye for them. So as soon as you put them up there, I'll try to answer them, and we'll talk about things. All right, let's talk about lines inside of ArcGIS Pro. And the first thing I want to do is I want to go and show you some of the things that are in Pro that are not in ArcMap, and some of the things that will make it easier for you to work with. One of them is a symbology component on here. So if I go I have some lines right now that have COGO values on them. And if I go to symbology, I actually will see that these are right now unique values. Let's just make them single symbols. And let's go ahead and make it so that these symbols, that we're going to do this in red. All right. But let's go ahead and add some things to it. Let's go and add some marker layers to our symbols. And these marker layers, if I go back over and click on the layers themselves, I can identify, and I can say I want these to be yellow. And then when I when I look at the marker placement, I tell it to go ahead and put these symbols at the actual extremes of the lines. Let's make them, not the outline, but the actual color. Let's make it red. Let's make them maybe 5 points and apply them. And this will work, except that if we have a regular multi-part line in here like this, it will show you the extremities, but it won't show you the vertices on the inside. So let's go and make it so that we can also see these interior vertices if we have them. Let's go to our structure again, add another marker to it, go back to our layers, and let's make that one green. And I apologize if you're red-green colorblind on here. And let's also go and, instead of making that at the extremities, let's put that on the vertices, and we'll symbolize it. And now when I clear this off, we can see that as we are putting lines in here, this will go and place a symbol. It's not placing a point, it's placing a marker symbol for the symbology on the vertices that are on the extremities of the lines the beginning and ending of the lines. And also it will put a separate green vertex on all vertices, all markers, on all the vertices on those lines. So we'll be able to see where there's vertices, where there's not vertices, and we'll look at that a little bit further as we go along. All right, that's the first thing, is symbology, and how ArcGIS Pro allows you to go and symbolize this so that you can see things that you couldn't see in ArcMap before. The second thing, let's talk about the differences between ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro as it relates to COGO. Inside of ArcMap COGO, in fact, all of the COGO fields are actually text fields. All right, and it stores string values there, text representations of what the bearings and distances and what those various COGO values were. Inside of ArcGIS Pro, those attribute fields are actually a data type of double. So these are double word numbers, and in fact, they are true numbers, so that you can actually do calculations against them. You can go and calculate what the difference is between the distance field and what the actual shape length is, and you can actually set what they look like and how they're displayed back to you. So for example, on the number field here, I can actually go and tell it that I wish to have it in 2 decimal places. I want to have 1,000 separators. I want to pad them with zeros, and I want to put a suffix of feet on there at the end, so that when I look at this now, let's go ahead and change that, keep it saved, and close that out, save that. When we look at the attribute table, we actually can see that we now have these telling us exactly what they are. Notice I've got the bearings or the directions being shown with 2 decimal places on the actual seconds. I can modify that. Again, go back to my data design to fields, go to my direction, and tell it to not have 2 decimal places, but rather to have 0 decimal places on here, and save that out. So Matt actually has a question for me, which is a really good question, especially when I'm talking at this. There actually is, Matt, a script that was written by Jason at ESRI on the Parcel Fabrics team. And that will actually take your existing ArcMap COGO fields and convert them into ArcGIS Pro number fields for you. I actually have shown that previously. If you go and do a search out on the internet, you should be able to go and find this. Let's see if this will help. And here, I think, is what it is. Nope, there's a solution. Here's Jason's solution right here. He's republished this tool. You can actually go out there and find it. It's actually a very nice tool. I used it quite a bit. Obviously, I'm not signed in right now, but yeah, there is a tool out there. It works very well. Jason did a great job on this, and we can thank Jason for a lot of the tools that are out there for it. So yes, definitely go ahead and convert them from ArcMap COGO into ArcGIS Pro COGO. You'll be happy you did as you get in there, because again, it allows you to start doing things like applying metrics and analysis to these values, so that you can do things like calculate whether or not you've got a rotation going on, or whether or not there's a scaling factor going in place. And you can see where the differences are. So if you're going into the ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro Parcel Fabric, it's even more important. So definitely. The other difference with lines, one more thing we're going to look at is labels. In fact, because you're now using number fields instead of text strings, there's actually an entire arcade script that will go and convert these number fields into values that you can go and use inside of your labels. If you're looking to learn Arcade, this is actually a very good script to use. Just know that and again, Jason wrote this, that there's several variables that are set up, including things like whether or not you're going to show the bearings or not. If you set that to true, it shows the bearings. If you set it to false, it does not show the bearings on there. So yeah, whether or not you want to show the radius and all of these variables, and you can modify them, the colors that get shown, it's all just an arcade script, and you can modify it and use it however you want. We do that quite a bit here, but they are number fields now, and they work with it as you can go and you can modify them. Matter of fact, if you go to ArcGIS Pro 3, there's some new scripts where you actually have the ability to go and put and solve some of the backlot issues with parcels. So if you're a parcel mapper, you understand what the backlot issue is and how that works. All right, so let's talk about some other components on here. I am now editing. Let's go down to my Traverse tool and look at, there have been some changes inside of ArcGIS Pro 3 for the Traverse tool. One of which previously, if you went to go and start a traverse, all right, you had the ability to go and switch between the types of lines that were being used in the parcel fabric. And you would be able to switch from sort of the dominant type that you were going to create a polygon from, tax parcels, subdivision parcels, lot parcels, and connection lines. Well, that's actually been eliminated. Now, when you go and start, you only get one choice. You start at one and you go in and input the values in here. And let's go and just real quickly use some shortcuts on here and put them in. And then when I go to a new line, it automatically starts where I stopped my last one. Previously, with 2.9 and earlier, when you went to a new line in Traverse, you had to reset the actual starting point. You don't do that anymore. It automatically sets the starting point to where you left off on the last one when you do a new line. So it's a nice addition. It is a little bit different in that you can't make that switch between origin connection lines or lines that go from points of commencement to the points of beginnings. We used to do that. Now you have to actually consciously go and make that choice. The other big change that's happened in here in the Traverse tool is that they've made it much more responsive. It's almost impossible now. Well, it's much more difficult to go and overwrite or type in COGO faster than it actually is responding. It's much faster than it used to be for that. So there's been some really nice changes in here. The Traverse tool, above everything else, I mean, that's about it. The fact that you can't switch between lines, the fact that when you do a new line, it automatically starts at the last one, and the speed has been greatly increased. Those are the big changes for 3. Everything else, the closure components on here, those are all the same. The ability to import and export ArcMap Traverse files are the same. It's very stable now, and there's very few changes on it. They've got it in place now. I do want to talk about something though, because I'm going to introduce the next tool, which is the divide tool. This is something that a lot of our clients, especially when I'm doing training, they ask me about, and it's one of these things I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of. So I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to draw a very long line. All right. Let's stop this. Let's get off of here. Let's go to create a line, 2-point line. Let's go from here to here and put a bend in it. All right. So this is a normal type of line. And when you place those lines, these endpoints are actually they are placed so that they are on the grid resolution of the actual spatial reference that's been set for this database. So just to sort of make sure everyone's aware of this, when you have a feature data set or when you have your spatial resolution, there is a resolution set for every single point. And this is set according to your projection and spatial reference. And it basically, in this one, it says that a point is going to be located no closer than 0.0003 or 3/10,000ths of a foot, which is very close, very good. However, there's an issue in that if I go into this line, and I'm hoping it's long enough that I can do this, and if I go into a divide function, I'm going to divide this tool or this line here into equal parts, and I'm going to divide it into 10 equal parts. All right. It's going to show me what that division is going to be. And by the way, we're going to look at divide a lot more here in a minute. So when I'm done with this and I clear this out, if I zoom into these points here, and here it is here, and if I look, they're actually, it turns out, because of the endpoints of these lines snapping to that resolution of my overall spatial grid, it turns out that those 2 points aren't exactly the same. And if I go to measure that distance, it turns out that that's 0. It's 0. But in doing certain functions, it thinks that that's not the same. That's inside what we often call the cluster tolerance of our parcels or of our lines. So just be aware that there are certain functions that when you go and perform them, the lines may not be snapped together anymore. And there are ways to go and fix that. I really am hoping that what we can do is we can convince Esri to go and put on the divide tool the same thing that they have on the Planarize tool. So we have divide here. It allows us to go and maybe have a cluster tolerance setting here. The Planarize tool, if I go back here and show you under Planarize here, Planarize tool has this option to have a cluster tolerance set. That cluster tolerance ensures that all the endpoints, after this is all divided up and snaps together. And we want to make sure that we get that on a couple of tools here, including the divide tool and the snap tool, and tools that take existing things and break them up. We want to make sure that that gets put in place. And Esri's been real good to listen to us, and just be aware that you can do something and have it break. And it doesn't necessarily mean you did anything wrong. It just means that it's been out there for a while and we can see it now. That's the difference. So let's get down here to lines again. I'm going to go and take these lines here, and I'm going to select them, and I'm going to delete them. And I'm just going to go and create a line again. This line, I've got multiple ways of creating it. The easiest way is just digitize it. And then I can go to my divide tool. All right, my divide tool will allow me to go and take that line and split it up in multiple different ways. The divide tool, and let's go in and do one more thing here. I'm going to go in and calculate or update the COGO on here just so we can see what this is like. I also want to make sure that my label's on here, and I want to make sure that's labeling it all the time. All right. So now I have my labels on, my divisions, and I'm going to go to divide. And what divide allows us to do is to take all of the different divide functions that were in ArcMap and put them into one single tool. And let's start through these various options. By the way, divide knows whether or not we have lines selected or polygons selected, and it gives us different options depending upon this. Let's start with this first one. We're going to go and divide this into distances, and we want to start at the beginning point. We can tell it to start at the start of the line or the end of the line. In this case, let's do this, and let's just take it, and we want to divide 100 feet off of the beginning of that line. All right. And I'm going to go and show you at the end here. It shows us how long the line is, how much we're taking out, and how much is left. And it's giving us the preview here. So I'm going to mute everybody if we can. Sorry about that. I'm going to ask everybody to mute themselves.
Let them know.
Sorry about. All right. So on here, I'm going to go and take 100 feet off of here, and I'm going to divide it. Watch what happens to this and watch what happens here. When I divide it, it actually will automatically calculate the value for me on here, and it removes it from one and puts it on the other. So it automatically calculates the COGO values if I have COGO values on here when I'm using many of these tools, and I want to use that as a differentiator. What is it doing? Why is it doing as we're going in here and talking about those? So that's one single distance. I also have the ability, and I'm going to take this one and say, well, what happens if I want to have multiple distances repeated multiple times? So I can sell it. I want to do 150 feet, and I want to delete. I want to go and repeat that 3 times. And again, preview will show me that it's doing 3 of these repeats or repetitions of this one value. When I go and do that, they are all now repeated and done for me. Finally, there's this varying, and this is one that parcel mappers tend to use a lot, and that it will start out and say, okay, we're going to do multiple different distances. So let's say I have a 50-foot distance here. I want to only repeat that once. And then I've got a 65.47. I'll do that once. Then I've got an 85 feet that I wish to have repeated twice. And as I'm going in here, I'm seeing, okay, here's 50, here's 65, 85 twice. And then I go in here to a 50-foot here. So as I go and do this, it will automatically go and divide them. Again, 50, 65.47, 85, 85, 50, and there's the remainder on there. So that the divide tools allow you to automatically calculate, and again, this is 3.0, automatically calculate those values as you're moving forward on here, and tell you what the remainder is on these parcels. All right, so again, you can tell from the start, you can tell from the end. I showed you early on equal parts. It will go and take a single line and divide it into multiple parts. You can do it into percentages. With 3.0, it also will allow you to take multiple lines. So let's say I have in here 2 lines. All right. I have 2 lines on here. Let's go ahead and stop this. Let's go back and edit and select these lines again. I can have 2 lines, and now when I go to divide, I can tell it to take these 2 lines and divide them into let's just say 8 pieces each, and I will be able to go and do multiple lines into the same number of equal parts. I cannot do multiple lines into distances at the moment, and I'm not sure they'll ever be able to do that, but I can go and do that and then get off of this tool, and it allows you to go and divide them up. There's some really, really nice tools inside of here for divisions. And if you are doing subdivision plats, and if you're working with lines and building things, and you want to go and replicate the information that's shown on the legal documents, this is a really nice way of doing it. I want to show you one more thing here, though. For example, I have a line here that's 17.91 feet long, or 1,791.70 feet. And I want to go and divide that into, let's do multiples of the same one. Let's do 100 feet, but let's go and do that 18 times. All right. Now, if you look, it's telling me on here that the number that I input actually exceeds the actual length of this line. So I then have the ability to go and proportion or distribute, according to their terminology, distribute the remaining lengths equally. So it will equally to go and distribute these shortages or overages within these lines as a result of me going and clicking this. All right, so whether I had done more or less, if I had done 18, I had done 17 instead of 18, it would still allow me to go and distribute between those 17 lines the differences, which is 91.17 feet. It would have distributed amongst those 17. Let's go ahead and do this and examine some of this. So in here, let's get off of divide. In here, let's look at the attributes here. In fact, let me go and show you and turn on the actual shape length field so we can see it. And I'm going to save that. So in here, you can see that the COGO value that's stored was 100 feet because I told it to take that 100 foot and distribute it amongst that 1,791, but the actual length of the line was 105.39. So it equally, or not equally, it proportionally distributed that overages or shortages amongst that one line for me on here. Again, really good tool inside of here. If you are a parcel mapper and you have to make sure that things represent both the legal distances and the actual map distances, this is a really good way to do this. Mark is asking me if I can do aligned features on here. I can. Let me go and show you the aligned features function on here. So let's go and create another line, just a regular line. And I just want to go and show this function. And let's say I have another line here, and this could be anything. That could be a polygon. This could be any edge, anything that I want to go and work against. I have a new tool inside of, not new tool, it's actually a tool that's been in Pro for a while, called Align Features. And this Align Features tool will allow me to go and redefine where things are located. So in this case, looking at my options here, I'm going to tell it to go and take any vertex that's within, I still 20 is not big enough. Let's go a little bit further. Let's make sure, because I just randomly drew it. So I'm basically, this Align Features tool, what it's doing is it's saying, take the path that I just drew, the geometry that I just drew, and analyze for all vertices within this 40 feet from that path. And if it is within there, pull it to the path. make that vertex move over to the path that I just drew. So anything within this tolerance that I drew will be moved over to this line. And will be moved the shortest distance possible to the line. It won't necessarily say take this vertex and move it here. It will move it shortest distance, which would be perpendicular in this case. So the other thing is we want to make sure that with this, we have no topology on here. This works well. And again, there's all sorts of options here, but right now I'm just going to say go ahead and do it. By the way, before we start, this option here on the bottom, allow aligning features without a selection, means that it will go and take anything that's being displayed and is editable and selectable and make that move on anything that it can see without it actually being selected. So let's go ahead and do that. And you'll note here, it actually went and moved every single vertex. So let's undo that. And let's redo that again. And you can see it actually moved the vertices. You'll see here, it moved the vertex so that it is perpendicular on here. And let's undo that again. And again, it moved the line over to here. All right. So you just to demonstrate for Mark and to help him understand. Yep. Mark said, Frank, that was when we divided the curve into the multiple segments. Actually, that doesn't necessarily, actually, that's a good thing. Mark is asking a really good question. If I have a long curve here, all right, and I tell it to go and not align it, sorry. Let me go and create a line here. Let me create that line. Good. Let me go back to divide tool, go through that same process. I'll divide it into 10 equal parts. All right. 10 equal parts. Divide it up, clear it out. Let's get off of the divide tool. Go in here and see what's going on here. There it is there. Mark's question was, well, can aligned features be used to go and make those so that they snap together again? So let's use align features. And again, I'm going to keep that 40 feet there. I don't think I need it, and I'm going to go and draw the same thing here. And I'm going to go and realign them. When I do that, let's see if in fact it will go and do that. Conceivably, it could have and should. It actually did on this case because it makes it snap to the closest ones, whereas divide does not. So Mark, that might be a good interim solution. I still think that our best choice is probably have them go and put the cluster tolerance in there as an option. But yeah, it's a good workaround is maybe doing align features on there. If you can remember right away to go and do that, to have it snap correctly. All right, so we went through the divide tool. The Planarize tool does similar things. I'm going to do a bunch of lines here. Oh, sorry, get off of the align feature tool, go to create tool, and let's create polylines here. All right, that's one line. When I go in here now and go to Planarize this line, it will go and take that line and intersect them all. And if you notice now, I now have individually, I have individual lines on here with these. All right, and it goes and allows me to go and intersect them all and creates its own lines in here. Notice, and I'm going to look at the difference between the red vertices and the green vertices. Remember the red vertices right now it's being symbolized so that the red is the end of the line. And in this case, That's one line, so that this interim vertex has not been split. It only is splitting things where they intersect on here. So Planarize goes and takes lines and looks at where they intersect and splits them wherever they intersect. It does not necessarily go and split them anytime there's a vertex, anytime there's a change in direction. There's a different tool for that. So let me go and look at that tool. Let's go and select these lines. And instead of Planarize, let's go to a tool called Split into COGO Lines. So we'll take all of these lines and split them. As with anything, remember to set your template here. And now it's split them all into individual COGO lines. And if you watch and see, the green vertices turn into red vertices, and it calculates the actual values for these lines in here as we're going. So Planarize goes and intersects and splits lines up where they intersect one another. Split into COGO lines goes and takes the lines and splits them into discrete lines anytime there's a vertex in there. And it also goes and calculates the COGO values for those newly created lines that it just put in place. All right. So I want to make sure we understand the difference here. Divide tool, if we've got COGO values, automatically goes and calcs it in 3.0. I think it may have done it in portions of 2.9. But in 3.0, it actually goes and recalcs the COGO values. If we do a Planarize, we didn't check the COGO values on there, but we can do that. If we do a split into COGO lines, it splits it into smaller lines on there. All right. Okay, so let's try whether or not, if we have a line with COGO values on here, all right, we have a line here. Let's go and tell it to update the COGO value on here. This is an interesting thing because we have one single line here. That one single line has a direction on here, and it has a value in here. What does it just calculate? Well, it turns out that COGO, in this case, is actually calculating, let's go and select that line again. It's actually calculating the direction and the distance from the point of beginning to the end of that line. So it calculated the bearing here to here. And again, I'm going to unselect this so that you'll see all these other are interim vertices. And it calculated the distance from the beginning, or from the start point to the end point of that line. But the actual length of the line is 4,300 or 4,232 feet. Again, let me get off here so you can see the start points, the interim vertices on here. What happens when I take that line and now go and modify it to Planarize it? All right. Oh, it did go and calculate all those values because I Planarize. So if I had COGO values, Planarize went and calculate them out on here, but it did not change this line, did not break this line up. It did not break this one up. So it did not split them into discrete lines. It still only went and did the intersections on the individual places where the lines intersected one another. All right. So again, Planarize allows you to intersect, or allows you to split lines where they intersect. Split it to COGO allows you to split lines wherever they have a vertex on there. All right. Let's look at some other components on here. So we were dealing with COGO values, dividing lines up, planarize them, splitting them into COGO. So let's take a line. Let's go in here and just create a line. And let's have a couple of lines here. The next tool we're going to look at is actually called parallel, copy parallel. And it's going to copy whatever lines we have selected. And it's going to copy them and allow us to go and copy them. Again, setting our template. And it asks whether or not we want to keep source attribute values, and then whether we want to do them into single or separate or into a single feature. And let's explore what that means. So if we take these values, these lines, and let's go and do the same thing. Let's go and have COGO values on these lines. All right. Let's go back to copy parallels. And if we go and say, copy it into a single value and then tell it, copy this 50 feet. And the option is then, okay, 50 feet, only repeat it one time and do it on both sides. And that we're seeing, we're seeing it's going to copy it 50 feet on the outside and 50 feet on the inside. And if you look, there's green vertices here and red vertices at the end. It will copy it so that these are one single polyline. But I can, if I tell it, don't do it into single features, but rather do it into separate features. If you watch, these green vertices turned into red vertices, meaning it's going to split them into individual discrete lines for me. So the difference is whether or not you want one polyline here, or whether you want discrete separate features as far as how you choose which of these options you want on here. And then you can choose whether it's on the left side or the right side or both sides on here. What happens at the corners, whether it's mitered or joined or bezeled. That's all right. We're not going to deal with that much. But what we are going to do is we are going to copy this to see what happens when we go and copy this. So again, copy parallel, we're working against lines that have COGO values on them. And in fact, when we do this and copy them, it automatically calculates the COGO values for us. So, and these are now discrete lines. Let's get out of here and see these are separate lines. That's one line there, one line here, one line here, one line here. So they are all discrete lines. They've all been calculated as we go out and as we move through here. Copy parallels. If you have the COGO values calculated, you can then tell it, do you want to do this as a single line or multiple lines? Let's go and do one more test here just so we can see. Let's take these three out. Let's calculate and take these two lines. And let's do a copy parallel onto, we want to do it onto the left side, no, the right side. And we want to do it into a single line. So that's going to be one single line. And let's look and see. And did it attribute that line? It did not attribute that line as far as COGO values on there. So if we did it into separate ones, it did, but not if we did it into single. By the way, I'm going through all these iterations just so you can understand these tools. They're really powerful, and you need to learn how to go and use them because it's important, especially as you want to make yourself more efficient. Make sure that you understand how these tools work. All right. We're going to do a couple more things now. We're going to go and create a couple lines here. All right. I'm going to take these two lines. And again, I'm going to go and update the COGO values on there just so that I have COGO values in here. And I'm going to look at What happens if I wanted to go and have lines extended so that they fit one another? So there's a couple tools here for that. The first one that we're going to use is called Extend and Trim. Now in ArcMap, we'd have to go and select which ones we want. With ArcGIS Pro, we have Extend Trim on here, and we have options. We can say, go ahead and extend trim without a selection. And literally, we could tell it to take this line. Let's zoom in here. We could tell it to take this line and extend it so it fit on here. And notice it did not recalc the COGO value. It just extended that line so that it would go and automatically fit on here. And I'm going to go and undo that just so you can pay attention here as I'm doing that. It does not change the COGO value until and unless we actually tell it recalculate the COGO value. So when we say recalc and do an extend trim, we say, okay, extend it. It went and recalced it. If we undo that, it will automatically just go and extend it. All right. So again, it extends this line here. It does not break or split this other line that we're joining it to. So if I want to go and do that, there's another tool called Line Intersect here. This Line Intersect tool, what it allows me to do is take two lines, this line, and I click on the line, and then this line, and it will show me where this intersection is going to be. Watch what it does now when I do this. Watch the COGO values on here, and I tell it I want to go and intersect it here. It automatically calced and recalced these COGO values for me. Let me undo this for you. All right. This one doesn't get recalced because it's not being split. It just extends it. This one gets split, and it automatically calcs those values for me on there. So again, depending upon what I want to do, I need to learn the tools that I'm going to be using. All right. I also, with the line intersection, have the ability to have it recalculate those lines that I'm extending or shortening. That's what this is. Or I could tell it to create a new line in addition to the one that's on there if I'm going to be extending a line. So in this case, let's do this. All right. And here I can tell it to create a new line. Let's clear this off. Remember, there's a red vertex at the end, meaning it's the end point of a line. All right. So now let's go and say, okay, it's intersect here and here. Tell it to go ahead and do that. Now it has created a new line for us. It's extended it out. It calculated the bearing on here, which is an extension of this line, but it did not calculate the actual distance on here. That's why it's shown in red. All right. So the option I have with my line intersection is I can extend the line, or I can actually tell it to create a new line on there. Let's undo this one more time and say, not just create a new one, but recalc it as you go. Line intersect, I click on the two lines that I wish to intersect. All right, and I click where it intersects, and it will go and calc them. It now created a new line here, created a new line, calculate the bearings and distances on it, and it split this other line that it came against. All right, so multiple ways of doing it, saying, nope, extend, just do an intersect, and intersect is going to split the line that it intersects. An extend trim does not split them, but it goes and extends them and trims them as we're going through. And you have all of those options on here as far as what's going to happen. One more thing I want to go and show you. All right, and let's use this one here. And it's going to select this line and all of these lines in here. And just to show I think we've got COGO values. We do not. Let's put COGO values on here. All right, let's update the COGO values on here. So we have COGO values for all this. I'm going to use one more tool and show you that. This is called the merge tool. Now, what happens when I merge these together and I have COGO values on them? All right, let me go. Here's the merge tool. So when I have COGO values on here, it will take everything that I have selected and merge them all together. And look at this. It automatically sums up the total of the lines that I have selected and will merge them together. So I can click on this and say merge it, and that line now has that. Notice what used to be endpoints are now individual vertices. These are interim vertices for here. And it has recalc that as a result of that merge. I'm going to undo one more thing here because I want to show you one of the things you need to be aware of. Let's go and again, calc the COGO values here. All right, so that everything has COGO values in here. And now I'm going to select all of these. And now I'm going to do a merge on this. There we go. Come on. Merge. Now merge tools now. Merge tools. Right now, because these are disconnected, it will not do summations. All right. It will merge them into a single multi-part line, but it will not go and calculate summations. So just be aware, merge works different ways depending upon how you have it selected logically. Let's go and copy this and let's paste that onto itself to show that I now have not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I actually have 16 lines instead of the 8. What happens when I do merge now? Oh, it merges the total number of lines if it's going to create a single line on here. So be aware that 8 times 36 is not 583. It's the other value that we had. So when I do a merge, it creates one line. And that's the total sum of all the lines that had COGO values on them. My point is that if I have two lines on top of one another, and let's just show this on a simpler one. Now let's say, yeah, go ahead and do that. I now have two lines here. And when I merge them, it will come back and say that new line that it's building is not 3594. It's actually 7188. Be aware that this is what the merge does. If you're going to create one single feature, it will sum those values up. It does not recognize whether or not they're on top of one another or whether they're next to one another. It sums them up. All right, so just be aware of that. Okay, so we just did a bunch of things here today, and there weren't very many questions, but hopefully you got something out of here, and hopefully you're going to come back and look at this and say, Frank said something about this. You know, Panda said something about this a while ago. What is it he was talking about? We went over how to display vertices on lines to make it easier for you to symbolize where is a vertex and where is it the ends of a line. So you can see the difference between these two. We talked about the COGO values on here and how it stores COGO values and then how it goes and produces those labels on here. We talked about changes to the traverse tool. We talked about the divide tool and what you want to be aware of if you're dividing a long line into many smaller lines. Mark also went and said, well, what if you go and use the align features? And we talked about align features, what it does. And it actually went and worked to help pull those lines together. It sort of snapped them back together for us. We talked about, again, the divide tool. We went all the different iterations on the divide tool. We talked about the Planarize tool, what it does, that in fact, it only goes and splits lines up where they intersect one another. And then we also talked about the split into COGO tools and how anytime there's a vertex, it splits it into a new line and it calculates the COGO values there. Then we looked at the parallel lines, the parallel option, the various iterations on there and what it does and when it creates separate lines, when it doesn't create separate lines. Then we went into extend and trim and the options there, the fact that when it extends trims, it does not split the line that it's extending to, but that the line intersection tool does. And then finally, we talked about the merge tool. So do we have any questions? I know I went through a lot, but I wanted to go and cover line editing and the tools that we have. We've got some really good tools now, but like any good craftsman, if you're going to be really proficient at your job, you need to learn what these tools do and how the different iterations of them produce different results. So please, let's get rid of all the stone carving tools and let's move into the modern era and start using ArcGIS Pro to do editing and manage our lines correctly. If there is no questions, let's go ahead and I will stop the workshop and hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you. Thanks for attending, and we hope you enjoyed this workshop. If you have questions, would like some more details about anything we discussed during this workshop, or if you or anyone at your organization would like information about training, support, or ways in which we can help you with your GIS needs, please contact me at frank@pandaconsulting.com or call me at 561-691-3277 and we can discuss how we can help you with your needs.